Hi everybody, it's Susan from Sunrise Quilt Studio, and today is another vintage quilt block. This is number 10 in the series, and this one is called Honeybee. And this one has some applique in it and piecing. So it's a really simple piece block. It is a 9-patch in the center with squares and rectangles surrounding it, and then we have some applique leaf shapes to represent the honeybee. So this is a Ruby McKim design, and hope you'll stay with me and I'll show you how to make this one. Okay, so I have all the pieces laid out for the honeybee block, and what you're going to need for your 9 patches, you're going to need 5 prints that are 2.5 inches square. This is our A pieces. The B pieces are 3.5 inches wide by 10 inches is what I cut those. I cut 2 pieces, and I traced my leaf pattern onto the paper side of a fusible interfacing, and this is Wonder Under that I'm using today. Now for C, this is the yellow leaves, and that's another, this is a scrap actually, but if you have a piece that's 10 inches by 3.5 inches wide, you can get 4 leaves on each one, so you'll have that. D is 4 pieces that are 3.5 by 6.5. E is 4 pieces that are 3.5 inches square, and F is 4 pieces that are 2.5 inches square, and those are all your backgrounds. So use whatever fusible method or applique method that you want for your leaves, because I've used 2 different methods on here. I used the non-fusible interfacing on the back of a couple of pieces, and then I kind of ran out of that interfacing, so I switched over to fusible on the others. So just use whatever you have, and right at the moment I found a couple of scraps of Wonder Under, so that's what I'm using today. So I traced those leaf shapes on the paper side, and I'm going to fuse them onto the wrong side of the fabric, and then I'll cut out these shapes. So I'll move these out of the way, and I'm just going to fuse them for now and then just let them sit and cool while I'm working on other parts of the project. So we can just keep moving that way. So here's my 3.5 inch by 10 inch pieces, and I try to cut my fusible just a little bit shorter so that I don't get any fusible on my mat. Now for when you're doing your fusible applique, just follow the manufacturer's instructions for how to fuse it. With Wonder Under, you just kind of do a quick swipe across, and you've got your bond. So I'm just going to set that aside and cool, and then do my last piece. I already did the first one to make sure my iron was hot enough. Okay, now I'm going to let those cool off before I cut them out. So I'm going to set those aside. And the next thing I'm going to work on is the 9 patch here. So I need my A pieces and my F pieces, and I'm going to go ahead and lay those out and make my 9 patch. And the fabric I'm using, the white is a Kona solid, and this print, this red print, is Flea Market by Lori Holt. So it's a reproduction fabric, and the yellow leaf is also a Lori Holt fabric, and from the Flea Market line, and the green is Riley Blake solid. So I'm just going to chain piece these down just like this, and then I'll add this piece to each one, and then I will sew the rows together. Okay, so I have a 50 weight thread in the machine, and I'm at, my stitch length is at 2.0 on my machine. So I'm just going to chain piece all these together. This is a really simple block. It's not complicated at all, so it's a nice break. It's a nice break from some of the more complex blocks. I'm going to sew on the last piece, and then I'll press and sew the rows together. Okay, so now we're going to press, but I have all 3 rows sewn. Okay, for these I'm going to press away from the white. So we'll just press towards the red on all of 3 rows here. And that way my seams will nest. Now if you want to press open, you can do that. Just do what works best for you. Okay, now I'm ready to sew all 3 rows together. And make sure my pieces nest together. And my last row, and I'm going to go ahead and pin. I'm just a little more comfortable with that being pinned, so here we go. Now I'm going to press these seams to one side, and then I have my 9-patch block. Okay, so now I'm going to lay the block out, and so I need my corners, which will all go here. See, this block goes together pretty quickly. So just like that. So once again, I'm going to sew together in rows, and I'm going to give these a quick press because they're a little bit wrinkled. Alrighty. Okay, so I'm going to sew these in a row. Now, ideally, you could have just done one strip like at the top and the bottom if you wanted to, but the seams are going to help you align your appliques, so that's why I left them in there. Okay, so I'm just going to sew this together just like a 9 patch, and just sew the first 2 patches of each row together. And then when I get these sewn together, then I'll sew on the 3rd piece. So here's the 9 patch. And here's the last row. And once I get this together, I'll press everything. And you can separate your pieces, or you can just leave them together. I like to separate them because they just pull on each other and make the piecing harder. So we'll just add the last piece to each row, and then press, and then sew the rows together. Oops. Make sure I sew it to the correct side. Alright, so I'm going to press these rows and then sew them together. I have my seams pressed to one side, and they are nested together. And I get these nested together here, hold them in place. Oops, and ran out of bobbin, so let me switch my bobbin. Okay, so here's the block, and I just need to press, and then we can put on the applique. And one thing I was planning on doing and kind of forgot was I was going to make the white squares in the 9 patch a print fabric that would coordinate with this red, and I kind of forgot about doing it when I cut these pieces out. So, but that's something you can do, is you can make this a print fabric and just make it, have it coordinate or contrast with your 9 patch. Okay, so now we need to do the appliques, and for the appliques, if you're using this method with fusible web, you're going to cut on the lines. If you were using a freezer paper method, then you would leave a 1/4 inch to an eighth of an inch to a 1/4 inch of fabric around the line. And if you were doing the interfacing type, you would sew on that line, because you would draw this on your interfacing, place it right sides together with your fabric, and then sew it on the line, slit a hole in the back of the interfacing, and then turn it and press it and applique it. I like the look of that, but I really don't have the time to do that. It takes considerably more time than what this method does. So I'm going to do this. So take a pair of scissors and cut out your appliques, and I'll do one of these corners for you. And my favorite fusible is the pressure sensitive fusible, but I had a scrap of this left, so I decided I needed to just use it. And the reason I like the pressure sensitive is that you can stick them in place and they will stay there until you sew them down. With this, they can slide around on you. So, but I used this for years until the pressure sensitive stuff came out, and then I prefer that. But I'm just using what I have on hand. So we need 2 leaves. In that. Now this is honeybee, so you can use colors that look like a bee. If you want like a dark color for the body and maybe a different color for the wings, you know, you can do whatever you want. I'm just using green and yellow just because I just like the way they looked with the red. So one way to get this off easily is to score it with a pin, crack that paper, and just push your finger through, and then it'll peel off real easily. So here we have that one. That one, and make sure you're leaving 1/4 of an inch, and you might want to mark your center here. This is you want to go in 3 inches. So I'm going to mark it within the seam allowance, the 3-inch mark, so that I know where that is. Okay. Leave yourself 1/4 of an inch for your seam allowance, so you can double check that. Make sure you've got 1/4 of an inch there, and I do. That way too. Okay, and once you get them all set where you like them, then you can press them down. And I'm just going to do a quick press with those. Alright, so now I have everything fused on, and it's ready for applique. So you can do whatever kind of applique you want. You can do blanket stitch like I'm going to do. You could just do a straight stitch and go close to the edges. You could use a satin stitch, you know, whatever kind of applique you want to do for this block. But let me show you my completed block. Here you can see a little bit better. There's the applique. It's a blanket stitch. You can see that. I used a green rayon, Gutermann rayon in the green, and I used a gold in the yellow because it's kind of a goldish yellow color there. So there is the completed block. Well, that's it for this video. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you learned something. If you like this video, don't forget to click that like button, and don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already, and click that notification bell so you'll be notified when the next video comes up. And in the meantime, I hope you're all staying safe and healthy, and I'll see you in the next video. Thanks for watching. For more quilting ideas, click on the video links. And to keep up with my latest projects, click on the subscribe button. I hope to see you again soon.